Week 2 for the Steelers. How could I forget? It's at the Denver Broncos right out of the gates. I mean,
Oh, fun.
2 years ago, first game of the season when Russell Wilson goes to the Broncos, he goes back to Seattle for a Monday night game. First game. This time around, second game. He's back in the place where he previously played, going against Sean Payton and the rookie Bo Nix. I don't know. Maybe Tomlin just wants to see how he does in those first 2 games. You don't have to worry about the fans booing him or chanting, "We want Fields," the first 2 games. And then you make a decision after at Atlanta, at Denver, who's going to be the quarterback week 3 when they come home for their home opener against the Chargers. But 3 of the first 4 games on the road, and then we will see them at home week 5. Rematch of Super Bowl 10, 13, and 30. The Cowboys at the Steelers. One of the great rivalries in all of football that rarely happens enough for my satisfaction.
Look at that schedule. Can you pull that back up? That schedule is interesting because you look at the Steelers, there are no division games until week 11. And you play the Browns twice in 2 weeks. You know, you got Ravens week 11 and then also week 16. And then you get the Bengals week 13 and finish with them in week 18. I mean, that, and then you got the Christmas game as well. You know, it's just, that's a lot, man. That's interesting. That's really interesting because that makes the schedule tougher in a lot of ways, but it also says, man, you can really determine a lot in that AFC North once you start getting into November. And other than that, I mean, you're playing teams that matter, especially early, an AFC game against the Broncos and then the Chargers and then the Colts. But I mean, that AFC North, man, that could be really interesting in November, December, early January.
Well, when the schedule came out, Steelers fans complained about that configuration with the division game so late. And I said, wait a minute. Think about the division you're in. You've got 3 quarterbacks with very real injury histories. So do you want to play them week 1? Or do you want to maybe see how it plays out? Because between Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson, history tells us at least one of them isn't going to be around for those late season games. And also, all of those teams are better than you. They're all better than you on paper. And the Steelers get better as the season goes on. Do you want to play the Browns, Bengals, and the Ravens right out of the gates? Or would you rather play them when you've had a chance to improve on the fly, especially since you're the team that's bringing in 2 new quarterbacks and we don't know which one's going to be the best one? We'll have a better idea of it by the time November rolls around. Art Rooney II was in the broadcast booth for the preseason opener, and he kind of complained a little about it. He's measured in his criticism, but I'd say, and maybe he's just not willing to say this out loud and he's just going to be coy about it, I'd say, I don't want to play any of those teams early. I want to play them late.
Well, I mean, I don't like the phrase control your own destiny, but I mean, that kind of is what that means when you're playing so many division games that late in the season. I mean, you get to control your own outcome there. I mean, it's not like you're really going to be going up against a random NFC team, all that. So, it's not going to count that much in terms of where the standings are, where the playoffs might end up. I mean, you're really going to be determining what happens to you in the AFC North once you get to November, December, January, early January football. And that, I mean, what's better than that as a team to really be able to say, okay, no, we understand that we have such opportunity here to do what we need to do in order to make sure that we are playing meaningful January football. I think it's a good opportunity.
And then the conspiracy theory that arose, and it's really not all that nutty, the idea once they announced the 4 teams of the AFC North will be the subject of the in-season Hard Knocks franchise this year. What a surprise. There's all that cross-pollination while the series will be going on. And we heard enough about the different factors that influence the NFL's sacred scheduling process. The Jets owe us one. So we get all those primetime games, and they're Sunday, Thursday, Monday, here, there, everywhere early in the season because they owe us, because God forbid, how dare they lose their starting quarterback 4 snaps into the season like they wanted to. like they asked you for a favor. Hey, NFL, is it okay? You gave us all these high-profile games. Is it okay if we don't have our starting quarterback all year? It was just kind of a weird moment that gave us a window into the motivations that we have to take into account. So maybe that is part of it. All right, question. Week 5, NBC and Peacock, Cowboys at Pittsburgh. Who's the quarterback? Who's the quarterback for the Steelers in that game?
Russell Wilson. I think it's still going to be Russell Wilson. I think if they're going to make a change, it wouldn't come until later, maybe at the bye. And they've got basically a bye that's midway through the season based on what we just saw right there, which is very helpful for this question. So, yeah, I would say Russell Wilson. Do you think it's going to be Justin Fields?
I don't know. I think that I'll have a firmer opinion after I see this next preseason game. Look at 2 weeks later, though. Back in Pittsburgh. I don't know. I would go with Justin Fields, but I know that Mike Tomlin, whatever he does works, and there's a method to the madness. So if he's all in with Russell Wilson, he must know something I don't. And maybe it's just as simple as I'm freaked out by we see erratic passing performances by Justin Fields. For every throw along the sideline, like the one we saw that was almost like an optical illusion, reception and throw, we get the one where he throws it over the guy's head who was shot out of a cannon to try to catch it. So I think there's a steadier hand with Russell Wilson, but there's a more exciting possibility with Justin Fields. Week 7 back in Pittsburgh for those Jets. Look at that. You've got Week 5 and Week 7, a couple of NBC and Peacock games, and then a Monday night game against the Giants, and then the bye. You got 3 primetime appearances between Week 5 and 8. And maybe the bye week is the time to make the change because you can't hide. You don't get the anonymity of the cluster of 1 o'clock Eastern games on a Sunday. You are standalone 3 out of 4 weeks. And that'll give the Steelers a lot to think about going into the bye if Russell Wilson is the quarterback and if they're 3-5 or worse through their first 8 games.
Yeah, well, you know what also is interesting about the Steelers schedule, and our producer Gary just pointed this out. I mean, the furthest that they go after week 6 really is basically Cincinnati. I mean, they're all in the Eastern time zone, so it's not like they have that extra aspect of things built in either. So, I mean, you could say that the schedule's unfavorable, favorable, whatever it happens to be, but it is interesting that the Steelers are going to be in the position that they're in because, look, if the quarterback doesn't work out early on, then yeah, they're probably going to make a change because you can't just do the same thing over and over and expect the same result. That's what people say the definition of insanity is, right? And I don't see Mike Tomlin doing that. But yeah, I think if the quarterback situation is going to change, then the bye would be a natural point to do that. And because I don't think whoever Mike Tomlin selects is going to get a short leash. That doesn't seem like the Mike Tomlin way, in part because of what you were saying earlier, Mike. I mean, he is not one to listen to the cacophony of voices, and fans and da-da-da-da-da-da. He's got a plan and he's going to stick to it. And that's something that I do appreciate about him. So we'll see. But I mean, to me, it seems like it's going to be Russell Wilson right now.
Another scheduling quirk that I noticed that benefits Russell Wilson, 3 of the first 6 games are against AFC West teams that he knows pretty well from the last 2 years. If 3 of the first 6 games were against NFC North teams, that's an advantage for Justin Fields. So yeah. I think from Tomlin's perspective, it's not difficult to come to the conclusion Russell Wilson's more established, Russell Wilson's more proven, Russell Wilson's time in Denver was an aberration. The fact that he didn't call Sean Payton, that was something that was part of a Sal Paolantonio feature on ESPN last week. He was interviewing Tomlin, and he asked about calling Payton. And Tomlin gave one of those classic Tomlin soundbite answers. We seek no comfort in the opinions of outsiders, and we want volunteers, not hostages. He didn't say that then, but he's got these sayings. It's there's a snake in my boots. It's the pull string. But why would you not call Sean Payton and just have a conversation with him about Russell Wilson? You can take it with a grain of salt. You never know when Sean Payton is going to say something that might benefit you. It's worth the price of the phone call, especially since phone calls aren't nearly as expensive as they used to be. You just pick up your damn phone and you hit the number. But it makes me think he's come to his conclusion about what happened in Denver, that it wasn't Russell Wilson's fault, that it was coaching that wasn't up to par in 2022 with Nathaniel Hackett, and last year it was just a bad fit. That Russell Wilson is not a guy who can run the Sean Payton 9,000 play offense and make all these checks and do all these things. Russell Wilson's skills are best utilized in more of a sandlot situation where you let Russ cook. And the fact that he never called Payton tells me that this guy who is very resolute and very clear-eyed in what he wants to do, regardless of whether it works, but he's never had a losing season, that he's got a vision that goes all the way back to when they got Russell Wilson, got Justin Fields, and Wilson's always been the guy. Pole position, he never anointed him, pole position, and I feel like that pole position, it makes it easier to carry that into the regular season. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.